Hello, my name is Jenny Hanlon, and I am a parent and family educator through Stillwater Early Childhood Family Education Program. And I know that a lot of families are wondering and maybe even worried about their children's learning at this point during the pandemic because there has been a lot of time where kids haven't been in programming, or if they're in programming, they're in maybe less than they would have been typically. And I wanted to just spend a little bit of time today, hopefully providing you with some comfort and perhaps some inspiration on all that your children are still learning, even though they may not be involved in the typical programming than they might be when we aren't in the middle of a pandemic. So, what I'm going to walk you through right now are the benefits of learning in and through nature. We know that since the pandemic began, that more and more people have been spending time outside. And this is a couple different reasons. One is that there are not as many places to go, less things are open. And so it's drawing people into the state parks and other area parks, which has been so fabulous for so many people. And another piece is it's just simply a safer place to be right now because you are able to spread out and not feel like you are interfering with other people, or getting too close with other people. So we're going to walk through the different benefits that your children are getting from their time outside. And as I mentioned, hopefully this will not only bring some comfort to you, but also some inspiration for things that perhaps you haven't thought about and that you might want to try with your own kids if they haven't already experienced some of these things before. So, a fabulous thing that happens when we are outside is we start to form connections, of course, to other humans if we're if we're together. I'm assuming your children, especially if you're at a park, would be with you, and also with plants and animals. Now, both of these pictures show animals that are domesticated, and although we might run into dogs and such when we're out on walks and exploring outside, but we also might run into squirrels, or we might see animal tracks that connect us to in nature and animals in a different way than we do if we're inside with them. And one of the things that I think that is just so beautiful about young children is they naturally feel connected to animals. They're naturally drawn to them. I'm sure you've seen your child pause before when they see a duck swim by, or a squirrel run by, or a bird fly up. It almost every child just stops and pauses and wonders about that. I love this quote here from Richard Louv, that we are the most ourselves when we are connecting to an animal, whether it's wild or domestic. And so when you're outside thinking about, even if you're not physically seeing animals, just looking for signs of animals creates a great connection for kids. And where the connection to other humans is just that time that they're spending with you outdoors. Creativity, of course. There's so many things that kids can do when they're outside, and in a lot of ways the outdoors is limitless. Here we have, and I let me just share with you that most of the pictures that I'm sharing with you are from a nature-based preschool program. So these are going to be more groups of children, but try to imagine it being you and your child, or your children playing together. Maybe you have some cousins that are in your bubble, or you have some friend groups or neighbors that are in your bubble. So try to kind of imagine that this could be your child or children within this. I think that digging with these great metal shovels can be a fabulous thing. Not everybody wants to have their yard dug up, so consider that. If you have more property, you might think of a place on your property that you'd be okay with your kids spending time digging. Digging is something that is so therapeutic to kids, and we know that even if your family hasn't been drastically impacted by the pandemic. For example, maybe you haven't lost a close family member to COVID-19, or maybe nobody in your family has lost a job due to the pandemic. There is still just kind of this layer of stress that most humans are carrying right now. And we know that children feel what their primary caregivers are feeling too. So even if we're trying so hard to not let them feel that, there most likely is some level of that with your kids right now. And there is just something about digging that with that force that kids are using that kind of works out some of that stress for them. So thinking about if you have a place on your property that they would be able to do that. You can also see in this picture here on the left that there is a child with a measuring tape. And so that tends to be something that a lot of us have around our homes. And so allowing your child to bring that outside with them, pointing out the numbers. Oh, how deep is this hole? Oh, wow, it's 3 inches deep. I wonder if you can make it 5 inches deep. And being able to point out those things if they are playing with siblings or neighbors or friends or cousins. Most likely there's going to be some discussion going on with that, and there's a lot of problem solving and communication skills coming with that. Now this picture on the right is more when nature is brought inside, where you might use some natural elements within the play that is happening indoors, and how these tree cookies in this picture can become any type of food, right? Where you can see there's a little piece of pizza on there. That little piece of plastic pizza is pizza no matter what, right? Where the tree cookies can become a real cookie, or they can become that could be even a pizza, that could be a pie. It's really limitless what the kids could decide to have that become. Fine and gross motor strength. I think that most of us realize the benefits to children's large muscles when they are playing outside, when they're running, when they're jumping, when they're climbing. And we often don't realize how much benefit their fine motor skills are getting with this. Now, in this picture, you can see this little boy who's just barely to gripping that stick and pushing it into the mud. Now, that gripping motion, as you can see, is very similar to what that child will someday use when he is starting to write with a pencil. And so anything that you can provide for your child as soon as they're not needing mittens outside, that they can be gripping and grasping at, helps build those muscles to prime them for when they are ready to be doing drawing and writing. The other piece is when children are climbing things, yes, it is building their large muscles, but it is also building those spine muscles too, because they have to grip on. If you think about if they're climbing up on a jungle gym, or even if they're climbing on a log, they're having to use their hands for gripping. Another piece is we know that a lot of children are weaker in their core than they should be. And part of that changed when we were asked to have babies sleep on their backs. And so babies are less comfortable on their tummies, which we want babies, of course, to be safe when they're sleeping. But it has led to babies less comfortable on their tummies and not building those core muscles when they're really little. And so being able to have your child move a ton outside, and even crawling around on the ground, even wiggling on the ground, can help build their core muscles, which will then make it easier for them when they are sitting at school, when they're sitting in a group time or sitting at a desk. They need those core muscles to be able to do that. And again, those are things that are usually naturally taking place when they are playing outside. So if your child isn't in a program right now and they're not sitting in a group time, it doesn't mean they're not still able to get some of those skills. Your child might be getting some of those skills that will help him be able to sit longer by that time playing outside and building those core muscles. That this goes along with that too, that postural control, just being able to kind of work those tummy muscles and be able to stay balanced. We know the benefits that children get out of assessing their own risk and being able to take risks. And this is something, again, that happens so much more naturally outdoors. We know that it's usually not very enjoyable to us when our kids are jumping on the couch at home inside or jumping on the bed inside. But when we go outside and they can jump from log to log or whatever it might be, that's a better place for that to be happening than indoors. So, sensory integration is, I'm actually going to read this because I feel like I can't say it as well as Angela Hanscom, who wrote the book Balanced and Barefoot. I highly recommend her book. Sensory integration takes all the puzzle pieces and pulls them together in order to create a bigger picture. Imagine climbing a tree in bare feet. You experience the sensation of climbing through your eyes, your feet, your hands, your nose, and even your muscles and joints. All the sensations of climbing the tree come together in one place in your brain. This integration allows your brain to experience the act of climbing as a whole brain, whole body experience. And we know that when more of our senses are involved in our learning, the more we will remember things. And so if you brought out some art activities outside, so think about maybe an art activity that you have done in an ECFE class in the past. You could kind of recreate that, but outside. And you could still do it inside, of course. However, the benefit of doing it outside is your child will have a stronger memory with that experience, associated with that experience, because they'll be outside. And the part of being outside is the child will feel the wind on their face. They'll feel if it's cold or warm. They will hear birds singing. They will hear other sounds, kind of like when I was talking in the beginning of the video when I was outside. We were hearing a variety of things different than when I am recording this portion right now. And so knowing that there's elements that you can kind of build upon while your child is home more, that they may actually gain even more memory and skill from, because you might be having it taking them outside to do that skill. Problem solving skills. We saw this earlier, a couple slides prior to this, with the children and the measuring tape. Here's another one. This is something, again, that is sometimes easier to come up with outside, but looking around your yard and thinking, what can my child help me with? Do we have some things that need to be hauled from one area of the yard to another? Do we have, or is there a park we could go to that we could be moving some things around, some fallen logs or something? And knowing that your child will be able to build a lot of muscle strength from those activities, but also some problem solving skills. So instead of this picture here with all the kids with the pumpkins and the gourds, I could have loaded all those pumpkins up for them and then asked them to pull them. I didn't choose to do that, though. Instead, I said to them that, hey, team, we need to work together to get these pumpkins back up to this other part of the farm. And how can we do that? And it was the kids that suggested, let's put them in the wagon. Another child suggested that we would roll them. A couple kids worked together to lift the pumpkins in there. Now, if your child doesn't have other children to play with them in this situation, that's okay. What I would recommend is that you, in some ways, kind of act as their playmate then in that situation. And when they might ask you to help them carry something, don't use your full weight that you're capable of. Use the weight that somebody about your child's size would use too. They won't necessarily know the difference. And then you could ask them, oh, well, how could we? This is really hard. How else could we do it? You can be asking them some questions that would lead to further learning for them, some deeper thinking. Language development. One of the things that I've always been able to experience as I've done a lot of outdoor education programming is the outdoors provides so much that kids want to talk about. They might see, as in this picture, a pumpkin on the ground that they want to talk about, or they might see animal tracks, or they might see a bird fly through the sky. And that alone just sparks discussion, whether they're having discussions with each other, again, if your child has playmates to have those discussions with, or it can be with you and you respond back and again ask questions like, well, where do you think the bird is going? Oh, what colors do you see on the bird? Oh, wow, it looks like it's flying to the south. Oh, it turned around, now it's coming over towards the south, or to the north, or whatever. Just having a discussion with them about what's happening around them. I mentioned this in the beginning, just the relief of stress, and it's a benefit to you also by getting your kiddos outside. It just does something for our soul to be outside, and um, nature has been able to give us a lot of examples of how things can look really dreary, and like we might feel like during a pandemic, and then they change, right? Then the trees start blooming again, and grass starts to grow, and it's provides us with promises that things will improve, and we might go through different shifts of things, but it really can have a powerful effect on us. And what a gift for your kids to be able to feel that as well, that if they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, that nature is a great place to be able to go explore and relieve some of that stress. Self regulation is a huge skill that we all need in life. It is definitely a skill that children need to be successful in school, and it is something that isn't always at the top of our minds, I guess, because we as adults we can. It's I guess I want to say we might feel like children will just naturally have it, but they don't. And they often need us to co regulate with them to help them. Help their body learn how to self-regulate. And so there's a couple different ways that you could work on self-regulation with your children when you're outside. If you are, for example, at a state park, you could have a waiting place. You could say, oh, I see that bench up ahead. If you want to run to the bench, you can, but stop at the bench, and that's where we'll meet. And they might end up having to wait for you for a while if you're not going as fast. But that's pretty motivating for them to know, like, hey, my grown up is letting me run that far up and have that freedom. I'd recommend, until you know the space really well, that it's a waiting place that is in eye shot of you, so you aren't losing track of where they are, and just in case the child doesn't regulate and keeps going. But that is a great way to practice self-regulation skills. Another thing can be by trying different outdoor activities together. It's not always easy to try a new thing. Here's an example on the left of a child trying snowshoes out. That can be frustrating, trying something new for the first time. And that's okay. It's okay for us to get frustrated, and it's okay for us to be able to help guide our child through that. We can bend down next to them and say, you know what, I was frustrated the first time I tried snowshoeing too. It's hard. Should we walk together? I could hold your hand, or I can just walk next to you, helping them to essentially kind of take a breath to be able to think about what's going to happen next. And again, such a fabulous skill that they will need when they do go into, for sure, into preschool and kindergarten. If you have a child that struggles to self-regulate, one thing that I recommend that is usually very useful is kind of going up to the child from behind and putting your hands on their chest and just saying, oh my goodness, your heart is beating so fast right now. It's time for us to slow down. Let's take a breath together, and then take some breaths. Let them, you can put their hands on their chest too, let them feel that, and let them feel when it goes slower so they can begin to feel that within their body. Confidence in knowing self and limits, as I mentioned a little bit earlier too, that being able to assess risk is a really important thing for kids, and um, being able to experiment, which again happens really naturally outside, and that does involve falling. That usually involves a few injuries here and there, or getting muddy or getting wet, as you can see in these pictures. But that is part of how they learn their limits. This little guy in the middle thought it was pretty fun to kind of lay down in the mud. And he realized soon after that he didn't love the feeling on him, and we helped him get cleaned up. And he knew next time when he went to that mud puddle, he knew how much, or in his circumstance, how much less he wanted to go in there from the last time. And that's how we experience life, is by trial and error. And this is a great way for kids to be able to learn more about themselves and experience the world around them. Again, whether they're out there experiencing it with playmates or siblings, or if they are out experiencing it with you as their parent or caregiver. And of course, we know that time outside can really build endurance, especially if you are out hiking or adventuring around. And what a gift for the kids to be able to have a good endurance, because when they get to elementary school and they're starting to do more in gym class, if they don't have a good endurance buildup, they might not be as excited about some of the activities that are happening during gym class. And some kids just tend to kind of shut down or be less interested. And we also know that it's important for our bodies to be active throughout life. And so, what a gift for them to be able to go on a mile or two hike. Some kids maybe even longer. And it doesn't mean you're not going to be stopping and taking a break and maybe having a snack or maybe reading a story. But it's so great for their little heart and bodies to be able to build that endurance and build up their cardiovascular strength too. Attention to small details is one of my very favorite things to do with young kids outside. When we think about the skill of being able to learn to read, the fine details that are in print, to be able to identify the difference between a P and an R, for example, or a Q and an O. Those are small details. And although a 2 and a 3 year old, they might be starting to be interested in letters, but they may not be yet, and that's okay. But what all young children are interested in is nature, and they are already at 1 or 2 to start tuning into these small details. So think about this beautiful, lovely maple leaf with the droplets of water on, looking at this with your child and pointing out to them, look at these tiny drops, look at the big drops, and look at how this vein goes up and how some of them go down. These moments, these little moments, prime the brain for learning to read and being able to decipher between those letters. And so, even, here's the example with the leaf. It could be an example with an animal track, and looking at, oh, here are the where you can see the paw or the toenails. Here's where kind of the paw, the softer part of the paw is. Or if you are spotting a caterpillar moving across the ground, stopping and really looking at the different colors that the caterpillar has, and the way the caterpillar moves as snowflakes drop on your arm, and being able to look at those with your child. So again, even if your child might be having less exposure to letters and numbers that they maybe would be getting more of if they were at school, this is another great way to continue to prime their brain for when they are getting more of that. One could argue too that the outdoors provides a more supportive context for learning. And again, part of that is because children are so motivated by nature and what's outside. So if you are at a state park or visiting another natural space, if there are maps, stop and look at those with your children. Even if they can't fully conceptualize them, you could even still show a map to a 1 year old and point out, oh, the arrow's pointing this way. That tells us to go over here. Let's go there. Oh, there's a number one up there. That's post number one. Um, just having that language involved in your communication with them is helping build on their development. And so just being able to also follow their lead a little bit for what they're observing. And last but definitely not least is spending time outside leads to stewardship of the earth. And I think this year has taught us a lot, of course, as we've been moving through this pandemic. One of the things that I think more and more people have had an appreciation for is nature and all that natural areas provide us. I mean, we've seen that over and over again as we've seen lions getting into state parks, and just what a beautiful thing that is for us to be able to engage with those spaces. And it's a reminder that we need to make sure these spaces are going to be here in the future, and that we want to be taking care of them. And if children don't have experiences in nature, they won't have motivation in the future to take care of them. And so, as you can see, these little kids wearing their squirrel tails as they're climbing on these, we call them our squirrel logs. That is building a love for being outside. It's building a love for the earth. And down the road, when those children have a chance to take care of the earth in whatever way that might look like in their lives, they will be much more apt to do that because of these moments. And that is definitely some long-term learning benefits. And what's important too, I love this quote from David Sobel, what's important is that children have an opportunity to bond with the natural world, to learn to love it before being asked to heal its wounds. And so, again, just being able to step back and just know that, yes, life is different right now as we're living in a pandemic, and we may have less opportunities to gather and less opportunities for programming. But there is still so much that your kiddos can get just by going out your door. And even if it's just a sidewalk, even if it's just walking down the sidewalk and looking for bugs in the grass, or looking for dog tracks because maybe there's dogs in your neighborhood and you're looking for tracks in the snow. That alone is going to be a wonderful gift that you can provide for your children during this time. And they are learning. They are learning by being with you. They are learning by being outside. They are learning by talking with you. They are learning by reading books with you. It's another thing that you can always do is, bring a backpack along on your walks or adventures and have some books in there. It's a great thing to do when your kid needs a break, especially if you maybe would want to keep going hiking a little bit more, knowing that, hey, okay, this break, we're actually going to make the best of this moment, and we're going to read a book right now as we both rejuvenate our energy, or as your child eats a snack. So just know that they are still getting so much out of this life, even though it is so different from what it was before.